Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks ZAK for inviting somebody from Afghanistan, and then women, and especially me. I was not informed to talk about women, but just the topic was sent in between society, tradition, and modernity in conflict. So maybe my thought is just generally about this conflict which exists. And of course, I as a woman and other women as a Afghan woman, still we are fighting between tradition and modernity to find a place for ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, in this conference, tradition, modernity, and conflict are keywords which together become one topic for today's discussion. Before I talk about the in-between society, tradition, and modernity in conflict, I would explain the three keywords subtly, and then, in the light of my understanding of these terms, I will detail my speech. My understanding is my perception. It is not a scholastic or a scientific definition and could be varied from person to person and from country to country and from religion to another religion. As an Afghan woman, grew up in a completely male-dominated society, a tradition is a man-produced and created environment of attitudes, values, norms, customs, opinions, skills, knowledge, and behavior that is being passed from one generation to another within a group of society with symbolic meaning or specially importance which has origin in the past. A Chinese scholar wrote in an editorial and philosophical research and defined the modernity as follows. Modernity is firstly a self-consciousness of new age. It regards the modern as an age totally different from the pre-modern. The mood of modernity can be defined in different understanding of time and history. They are first the project of modernity of the Enlightenment reason as its core concept. Second, modernity as an instantaneous life formation which is embedded in modern culture. Third, modernity as a new comprehensive but incomplete project seeking for alternative to religion. Because the dynamic of modernity is derived from the impulse of self-emancipating of life, we should handle and even resolve the problem of modernity in the light of the ideal of ongoing human life. The problem of modernity are so appealing that they arise a question everyone ought to ask: are such level of suffering imposed by human beings on each other really necessary? The answer could be yes or no. Because conflict means different things to different people. For some, a definition of conflict involves fighting, war, and trade embargoes, and so on. For others, it may be a different in opinion, perspective, or personality. One party may feel they are in a conflict situation when the other party feels that they are just discussing opposing views. A lot depends on our personal take of the situation. In my opinion, conflict is a characteristic of human existence. Without conflict, we cannot overcome problems. We cannot change, improve, or remove old tradition with a new tradition. We cannot learn new ways of life. The new tradition, which is also called modernity, could be replaced by another new tradition, which become post-modernity era. In our world, the opposite of conflict is peace. In all divine religion, the struggle between khair means good and shar means evil is unending. Both good and evil are part of human life, and the human being together create a group of society, and that society adopts certain tradition. Therefore, tradition and modernity is a part of the human life, or it is two faces of the same coin, but with different outlook and outfit. One face could be perceived as a positive and other negative, or vice versa. The important thing to grasp is that they entirely depend on the people involved. It depends on their having a particular point of view or tradition which may or may not have independent facts and evidence to support its interpretation. Since good and bad is a part of the human being, therefore a conflict does not necessarily can only happen between tradition and modernity, but can also occur between two modern societies as well. So let us not always think or believe that tradition is the opposite of modernity, but this could be in many ways complementary. Tradition could be the foundation for modernity, and it could be the start of rethinking our tradition, culture, beliefs, and all aspects of life. A tradition could be the testing field for new ideas and pilot programs which can prepare the human being to counter the arising challenges. The evolution of tradition may also call modernity. Change in the different moods of life occurred. For example, writing with a wooden pen changing to computing, transporting by horses or donkey changing to airplanes, transporting letters by postman to emails, or word of the mouth constitution and laws. Word of the mouth to constitution and laws. Eating by hands to spoon, presentation on blackboard to a PowerPoint presentation, and so on. All these have roots in our tradition and in our society. Each modernity has its foundation in tradition. If we take a deeper glance to the subject matter, we find that the continuation of the world is because of the fight for new things over the old one. A new phenomena usually takes birth from the old one. This is a continued and everlasting process. It existed and will continue until the world exists. In other words, without innovation and birth of new things to replace old ones, change and modernity cannot happen. The transition from a pre-modern or traditional to a modern society is frequently described as a modernization. Modernization theory emphasizes the process of increasing social integration and its economic, social, and cultural ramification. At the economic side, Rostow and Kuznets said that the notion of modernization encompasses the increasing movement of goods, people, and information among formerly disjunct subpopulation, which is typically accompanied by increasing efficiency, increasing firm size, and economic growth. At the social and cultural side, Engelhardt and Baker says that modernization is characterized by a change of values and beliefs. The individual become more important and the family and local community decrease in importance. Granovetter said that strong local ties are augmented or replaced by weak long-distance links. Culture may have important repercussions on economic performances, in particular if the vanishing power of localized norms is not appropriately replaced by formal institutions. In Afghanistan, the extended family, the major economic and social unit in the society, replaces government because of the absence of an adequate nationwide service infrastructure. Child socialization takes place within family because of deficiency in the education system. Thus, individual social, economic, and political rights and obligations are found with the family, which guarantees security to each man and woman from birth to death. Changes in the area cited above do not have much to do with the conflict between tradition and modernity. This conflict is usually applied to the arts and has to do with changes in, for example, music, tonal to atonal, and painting and sculpture, figurative to abstract, which took place in the period 1900 and 1933. In the art, we are now in the postmodern period. What I think the question means is, what changed from traditional norms in the area mentioned are reflected in contemporary life as opposed to the life of 100 years ago? The answer is not straightforward, as particularly in immigration trends, we move back and forth at relatively fast pace. Most of things change have taken place at different times, mostly in the postmodern period. For example, which I gave pertain mostly to Afghanistan, but I can give example of US and to lesser degree, if at all so far, that the rest of the world, Western world is concerned, they hardly apply to all and to the rest of the world. And the rest, the situation has changed in the past 60 years, from one which in many parts of the USA, African American had to go to segregated schools and ride in the back of the bus, to one in which African American is the president. In religion, the power of the church to regulate the life of the community has gone from very strong to very weak. On contrary, in Afghanistan, the leader of the mosque is the traditional agent of change in the society. The mosque is not only a place for prayer, but also a place for social and political discussions. The status of women changed first about 90 years ago when they received the right to vote nationwide. Gradually, especially during World War II, women started to move into workplace outside the home. By 1970, this trend accelerated, and today women are executives and major corporation, senators, Supreme Court justice, and so on. Integral to this change, we were the development of reliable contraception and the boarding of educational opportunities for women. In Afghanistan, since 19th century, first King Sher Ali Khan and then King Habibullah Khan took first steps towards changes. After 1990, Afghanistan independence, King Amanullah Khan took more firm steps towards modernization and civilization. A woman publication started, and sometimes Queen Suraya would print some articles too. This was when, for the first time, Afghanistan developed a constitution, laws for the country. This was another fight against prevalent tradition in the society. Lots of changes happened in that time. Child marriage was stopped or become illegal. Judiciary system was taken from the hand of mosque leaders to the professional judges. Burqa, min chadari. Burqa for women was removed. Queen attended the big jirga or Grand Council. Radio, theater were established. External relation with the Western world was expanded, and then to the other type. All these moves toward modernization was take place during the decade of 1919, when people's mindset was still very much traditional. Though it was supported by few urban populations, especially in Kabul, but most of rural and provincial population were against, and especially with women's right, freedom, and education. A mullah, which is called priest. A mullah in the south famous as a mullah lang, or leg disabled person. In a gathering, held the Quran in one hand and the Constitution in another hand, and asked the crowd, which one do you accept, the Quran or the Constitution which developed by the king's government? This was start of movement to stop and kill the spirit of change in the country. We can name Amanullah Khan era the severe time for fight between tradition and modernization, and eventually his government collapsed and failed. Since 1919 till today, when we are in the second decade of 21st century, Afghanistan has been served battlefield for the tradition and modernization. There are some math that happen when moving from one era to a new one, or change old tradition with a new one, or to change society to modernity. Change happen in more revolutionary way, not in a very natural or evolutionary way. These quick and revolutionary steps towards modernization put urban population in conflict with the rural population, and such the process not only slowed down, but the modern culture and tradition were changed to the very first old tradition. The second conflict is the outlook of the modernist to the society. Traditional modernity is based on perception, not on realism. For example, in Afghanistan, the conflict between tradition and modernity over the scientific and realistic understanding of this phenomena is caused by the lack of understanding of the nature of tradition and modernity. It is sometimes believed that whatever is in religion is tradition, and whatever is coming from West is modernity. However, it is finally concluded that there is conflict between Islam and West, while it is neither Islam is the traditional, nor there is a modern West. On the other hand, there is no absolute conflict between Islam and the West. The third math is that both traditionalists and modernists mostly focus on symbolism and not focus on the substance of the modernity. I think that the essence of the modernity should focus on improving the attitude, knowledge, skills of the citizen rather than appearance such as clothing, eating, styling, house outlook, city planning, streets, roads, advancement, information technology, science, and physics. If the attitude is traditional, because this equipment and advancement could jeopardize the social, economic, and political system, and even could be used to create war and battle between various civilizations and even tradition with the same society. Symbolic change is not necessarily a modernity. If I use herbal medicine instead of allopathic medicine, or vice versa, if I read printed newspaper instead of electronic newspaper, or if I live in a village instead of city, all this does not make me traditional or modernist. Unless my way of thinking, knowledge, and behavior together has not been changed and improved in a way where I and society can cope in a better way with the existing and arising challenges of the life now and in the future. In some tradition, as the first steps for modernity, lesson could be learned from the old tradition so that you can develop a new version of the tradition which is called modernity. The modernity could become an old tradition when the second generation of modernity is adopted by the society. Modernity should focus on realism, essence, and substance of the issue. A distinction between divine tradition and human tradition has to be made, and finally we should develop all modern ways of life. With intention to change the attitude, knowledge, and skills of individuals and societies so that conflict between goods and evils become an opportunity, not a problem. As far as intention is to use modernity for the goods of the human being, if not, this could become a catastrophe for the humanity. I'm sorry, sometimes it's very difficult to pronounce some of the names in English and also some of the English words because English is my fourth language. Thank you very much.